People always say finding someone is the hard part. They're wrong. The hard part is what happens when you finally do. My name is Kai Morgan, and for almost a year, I built my entire future around one person, Noah Bennett. If you had asked me when I was 17 whether I'd spend 18 months thinking about the same guy every single day, I would have laughed. Back then, I thought life moved forward in a straight line. Friends stayed friends. Promises stayed intact. People didn't just disappear from your world and leave a hole shaped exactly like them. But life doesn't care what you think. It just keeps moving. The last real conversation Noah and I had happened on a gray October afternoon during our senior year of high school. I still remembered the way the wind pushed fallen leaves across the parking lot. I still remembered the expression on his face. Most of all, I remembered the last thing he said before walking away. One sentence, 12 words. Somehow those 12 words followed me through graduation, through every sleepless night, through every college application I filled out. Stanford, that was the clue, the only clue. I found out months later that Noah had been accepted there. From that moment on, Stanford stopped being a university and became a destination, a finish line, a chance. Every late night study session, every exam, every application essay carried the same secret goal: find Noah. Explain everything. Fix what I broke. It sounded simple when I imagined it. Almost comforting. In my head, I played the scene hundreds of times. I'd see him across campus. He'd look surprised. We'd talk. Maybe he'd be angry at first. Maybe he'd make me work for forgiveness. But eventually, we'd figure it out. That's the thing about fantasies. They never account for reality. Reality arrived 3 weeks into my first semester. It was a Tuesday afternoon. Sunny. 72 degrees. Students filled the courtyard between classes, carrying backpacks and coffee cups, moving with the confidence of people who already belonged there. I was sitting on a stone bench pretending to read a textbook when I saw someone crossing the plaza. At first it was just a familiar silhouette, then a familiar walk. Quiet, steady, unhurried. My heart recognized him before my eyes did. Noah. Every sound around me seemed to fade. Conversations blurred together. The world narrowed to a single point. He looked older, taller, somehow more certain of himself. The awkward 17-year-old I remembered had become someone else entirely. Someone who fit perfectly into the life around him. I stood so quickly, my backpack nearly fell off the bench. My hands felt numb. This was it. The moment I'd imagined for a year. The moment I'd crossed the country for. I started walking toward him. Then faster. Then almost running. Noah was only a few yards away when I finally found my voice. Noah! He stopped. For a second I couldn't breathe. Slowly he turned around. His eyes met mine. And instead of recognition, instead of surprise, instead of anything I had spent a year hoping to see, there was only distance. For a second, neither of us moved. I had spent a year imagining this moment, and somehow I still felt completely unprepared for it. Noah's expression did not change. No shock, no anger, no relief. Just a polite kind of confusion that hit harder than any rejection I had ever imagined. Kai, he said finally. Hearing my name in his voice again sent a strange ache through my chest. Yeah. I laughed nervously. Wow, that is all I have right now. Just wow. Noah adjusted the strap of his backpack. I did not know you were here. I transferred this semester. His eyes flickered briefly across my face. Stanford is a big place. Apparently not big enough. The joke landed somewhere between us and immediately died. I wished I could grab it and throw it into the nearest trash can. Noah glanced toward one of the academic buildings behind me. I should get to class. Of course he should. He had places to be. People waiting for him. A life that had continued while mine had been stuck replaying old memories. Right, yeah, class. I nodded too quickly. Makes sense. An awkward silence settled over us. I hated silence. Noah never used to. He always seemed comfortable letting moments breathe while I rushed to fill every empty space with words. How have you been? I asked. Noah considered the question. Good, just good. One word. I had spent hundreds of nights wondering about him and got one word in return. That is good, I said. I am glad. Another pause. Somewhere nearby, students laughed as they crossed the courtyard. A skateboard rattled along the sidewalk. Life kept moving while I stood there feeling 17 again. Noah looked toward the building once more. I really need to go. Can we talk later? The question escaped before I could stop it. Noah hesitated. It was small, barely noticeable, but it was there. I do not know. Not yes. Not no. Somehow that made it worse. Just coffee, I said quickly. 10 minutes. 5 if you hate me. Noah exhaled softly through his nose. You always did negotiate like you were buying a used car. The comment caught me off guard. It was the first familiar thing he had said. For half a second, I saw the Noah I remembered. Then the distance returned. I have class, he repeated. Maybe another time. Before I could answer, he stepped around me and continued across the plaza. I watched him disappear into the crowd. He never looked back. I stood there for another minute pretending I was not completely wrecked. Then my phone buzzed. My roommate, Caleb. Where are you? Group project starts in 10 minutes. I stared at the message before typing back. Having a minor emotional crisis. Might be late. His response came instantly. Again? I shoved my phone into my pocket and headed toward the library. The rest of the afternoon passed in a blur of lectures and conversations I barely heard. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Noah's face. Not because he looked angry, not because he looked hurt, because he looked fine. That was the part I could not stop thinking about. By sunset, I found myself sitting alone outside my dorm, watching students drift across campus beneath strings of golden lights. I had always believed finding Noah would change everything. Instead, it felt like I had arrived at the end of a journey, only to discover I was standing at the beginning of something much harder. That night, I did not sleep much. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Noah standing in the courtyard, looking at me like I was someone he used to know. By 2 a.m, I was staring at the ceiling of my dorm room while my roommate snored loud enough to qualify as a natural disaster. This is pathetic, I muttered to myself. The ceiling offered no feedback. The next morning brought sunshine, crowded sidewalks, and exactly 0 improvement to my mental state. I made it through 2 classes before giving up on pretending I could focus. Instead, my mind drifted somewhere it always seemed to drift whenever Noah was involved. Back to high school. Back before everything became complicated. The funny thing was that when Noah and I first met, I did not even think we would become friends. He was the quiet kid who always arrived 5 minutes early. I was the kid who arrived 30 seconds before the bell and called that good time management. During sophomore year, our history teacher assigned seats alphabetically. That was how Noah Bennett ended up directly beside me. I still remembered dropping into my chair and looking over at him. You look nervous, I had said. Noah glanced up from his notebook. I am sitting next to you. Fair. He nodded once and went back to writing. That should have been the end of it. Somehow it was not. Over the next few weeks, I found reasons to talk to him constantly. Sometimes I asked questions I already knew the answers to. Sometimes I borrowed pencils I did not need. Once I spent 10 minutes pretending I could not understand an assignment just to make him explain it. You know exactly what this means, Noah said one afternoon. Maybe. But you explain it better. He rolled his eyes. That was not even a good excuse. It worked, though. The corner of his mouth twitched before he looked back down at his paper. Looking back now, I think those tiny moments mattered more than I realized. Noah was not loud. He was not the kind of person who walked into a room and demanded attention. But when he laughed, really laughed, it felt like winning something. One afternoon after school, we ended up partnered for a science project. I showed up at the library carrying absolutely none of the materials we needed. Noah stared at me. Did you bring anything? Positive energy. We are doomed. That is hurtful. It is accurate. We spent 3 hours working on that project. Somewhere between arguing over presentation slides and sharing vending machine snacks, something shifted. The conversations became easier. The silences became comfortable. Before long, Noah was the first person I texted when something funny happened, and the first person I looked for when I walked into school. At the time, I never questioned why. I just knew my day felt better whenever he was around. What I did not know was that someone else had started paying attention too. Someone who watched every conversation, every joke, every minute Noah and I spent together, Ethan Carter. Ethan Carter had been my best friend for years. If you asked anyone at school, they would have described him as the kind of guy parents loved and teachers trusted. Good grades, easy smile. Captain of something every semester, the sort of person who seemed naturally good at everything. Back then, I thought I was lucky to have a friend like him. Looking back now, I realize there is a difference between someone being close to you and someone being happy for you. The first time Ethan mentioned Noah should have been a warning. I just did not know it yet. We were sitting in the bleachers after school, eating terrible cafeteria cookies. Ethan nodded toward the parking lot where Noah was walking toward the bus stop. You spend a lot of time with him lately. He is my project partner. Ethan raised an eyebrow. For 4 months? It was a very demanding project. He laughed. Sure, at the time it felt harmful. Most things do before you know where they lead. As junior year turned into senior year, Noah became part of my everyday life. We studied together, texted constantly, shared inside jokes nobody else understood. Somewhere along the way, people started assuming we were inseparable. Ethan noticed, more than anyone else. You are skipping lunch with us again? He asked one afternoon. Noah needed help preparing for a presentation. Ethan smiled. Of course he did. Something about the way he said it made me pause. What is that supposed to mean? Nothing. He leaned back in his chair. I just think it is funny how available you are whenever Noah calls. I rolled my eyes. You are being dramatic. Maybe. But the smile never quite reached his eyes. Little comments started appearing after that, small enough to ignore, frequent enough to linger. Noah seems kind of annoyed lately. Really? Maybe I am wrong. Or I saw Noah leave before you got there. He looked upset. Then he would immediately change the subject before I could ask questions. Tiny seeds, tiny doubts. At first, they meant nothing. Then they started growing roots. The strange thing was that Noah never acted differently around me. He was still the same Noah. Still patient. Still thoughtful. Still the person who remembered my favorite coffee order and somehow knew exactly when I was having a bad day. But Ethan kept making observations. You ever wonder if Noah tells you everything? He asked one evening. What does that mean? Nothing. Forget it. I hated when people said forget it. Nobody says forget it unless they want you to remember it forever. One Friday after football season ended, I arrived at school early and found Noah sitting alone outside the library. He looked tired, not physically, emotionally, like something heavy was sitting on his shoulders. I dropped into the seat beside him. You look like someone stole your puppy. Noah laughed softly. I never had a puppy. That is not the point. His smile faded. For a moment it looked like he wanted to say something important. Then his phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen and immediately locked it again. Everything okay? I asked. Noah hesitated. Yeah, it is nothing. But it was not nothing. I could tell. Before I could press further, the first bell rang across campus. Noah stood. I will see you later, okay? Okay. I watched him walk away. Then my phone vibrated. A message from Ethan. We need to talk. It is about Noah. The message sat on my screen for the rest of the morning. We need to talk. It is about Noah. By lunch, I finally found Ethan leaning against a row of lockers like he had been expecting me all along. You look dramatic, I said. That is because you never listen when I try to warn you about things. Ethan pushed away from the lockers. Walk with me. We headed toward the athletic field. The autumn air felt colder than it should have. Okay, I said. What is so important? Ethan shoved his hands into his jacket pockets. I did not want to tell you this. Then do not, Kai. The seriousness in his voice made me stop joking. Ethan looked away for a moment before speaking again. I think Noah has been lying to you. The words landed wrong immediately. About what? About a lot of things. You are going to need something more specific than that. Ethan sighed. I saw him talking about you. I frowned. People talk about me all the time. I am fascinating. Normally that would have earned a laugh. It did not. He was making fun of you. My smile disappeared. What? Last week, behind the gym. Ethan looked uncomfortable, which only made him seem more believable. I heard him telling some people that you follow him around like a lost puppy. Noah would never say that. Maybe. Ethan shrugged. Maybe I heard wrong. There was that phrase again. Maybe. Just enough uncertainty to make me doubt myself. Who was he talking to? I asked. Does it matter? Yes. I do not remember. The answer felt strange, but I pushed the feeling aside. The rest of the day dragged. Every interaction with Noah suddenly felt different. Every laugh, every delayed text, every distracted glance. Doubt has a way of changing memories while they are still happening. 2 days later, things got worse. I was walking toward the library when I spotted Noah across the quad. Relief hit me instantly. For the first time all week, he was alone. I started toward him, then I stopped. Noah was standing with a girl from his chemistry class. She handed him something. He smiled. They talked for a few seconds before she walked away laughing. My stomach tightened. It should not have mattered. But after Ethan's comments, everything suddenly mattered. That evening, Noah texted me. Are we still meeting to work on the presentation? I stared at the message longer than necessary before replying. Busy tonight. A few minutes later, another message appeared. Everything okay? I typed several responses and deleted all of them. Finally, I sent, yeah, just tired. The 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again, then nothing. The next Monday, Noah found me outside school before first period. Did I do something? He asked quietly. I looked up from my phone. What? You have been avoiding me. I have not. Even to my own ears, it sounded weak. Noah studied my face. Kai. There was concern in his voice. Real concern. For a second, I almost told him everything. Then Ethan's words echoed in my head. He is lying to you. I looked away first, and that was the moment everything started falling apart. The memory stayed buried for years until a rainy Thursday night during my second month at Stanford. I was leaving the library when I heard someone call a familiar name. Ethan? I turned instinctively. Across the street, outside a coffee shop, stood Ethan Carter. For a second, I thought my brain was playing tricks on me. Then he laughed at something his friend said, and I knew it was really him. I had not seen Ethan since high school graduation. My first instinct was to walk away. Instead, I crossed the street. Kai? Ethan looked genuinely surprised. Well, this is unexpected. Apparently Stanford is smaller than I thought. He smiled. Still making bad jokes, I see. We sat inside the coffee shop for almost an hour. At first the conversation stayed safe. Classes, careers, old teachers. Then Noah's name appeared between us like a ghost neither of us could ignore. Ethan stirred his coffee. You found him? Yeah. How did that go? I laughed once. Terribly. Ethan looked down at his cup. For the first time all evening, he seemed uncomfortable. Kai, there is something I should have told you a long time ago. A strange feeling settled in my stomach. What are you talking about? Ethan exhaled slowly. Senior year. Noah. Every sound in the coffee shop seemed to fade. What about him? Ethan rubbed the back of his neck. I lied. The words hit harder than I expected. What? A lot of the things I told you back then were not true. I stared at him. You said Noah was talking behind my back. Ethan nodded. He was not. You said he was making fun of me. He was not. My chest tightened. Why? Ethan looked miserable. Because I was jealous? Jealous? Everybody liked you, Kai, but you only ever paid attention to Noah. I laughed in disbelief. You destroyed a friendship because you were jealous? I did not think it would go that far. You literally spent months convincing me he could not be trusted. Ethan flinched. I know. The anger that followed surprised me, not because it existed, because it had taken so long to arrive. Suddenly, every conversation from senior year replayed differently. Every doubt, every hesitation, every poisoned comment disguised as concern. Did Noah know? I asked. Ethan shook his head. Not at first. At first? Ethan looked away. Toward the end, I think he figured it out. My heart sank. And you never told me? I was 17 and stupid. That is not an excuse, I know. We sat in silence for several seconds. Rain tapped softly against the windows. Finally, I asked the question I had been carrying for years. The day Noah left, did you have anything to do with that too? Ethan closed his eyes briefly. When he opened them again, the answer was already there. Yes. My stomach dropped. Kai, I am sorry. But I was already standing, because for the first time in years, I finally understood something. Noah had never betrayed me. I had betrayed him. And somehow that realization hurt more than anything else. For 2 days, I carried the truth around like a stone in my chest. Every class felt longer. Every conversation felt distant. I kept replaying senior year in my head, searching for the moment I should have known better. The answer was always the same. There had been dozens of moments. I just had not wanted to see them. On Friday afternoon, I finally spotted Noah leaving the engineering building. My pulse immediately started racing. He was halfway down the steps when I called his name. Noah. He stopped but did not turn right away. Somehow that hurt more than if he had ignored me completely. When he finally faced me, his expression was guarded. What is it, Kai? I walked closer. Can we talk? Noah glanced toward the path ahead. I have somewhere to be. Please. The word escaped before I could stop it. Something shifted in his eyes. Not softness, just surprise. 5 minutes, he said. We ended up sitting on a bench beneath a row of oak trees. Students passed by around us, laughing, carrying backpacks, living ordinary lives while mine felt suspended in place. For several seconds, I could not find the right words. Noah waited. He always had more patience than I deserved. Finally, I looked at him. I know what happened. Noah frowned slightly. That could mean a lot of things. Ethan. The name landed between us. Noah's jaw tightened. What about him? I saw him this week. Noah looked away immediately. That reaction told me everything. You already knew, did you not? I asked quietly. He let out a slow breath. Eventually. Why did you never tell me? Noah laughed once, but there was no humor in it. I tried. The words hit like a punch to the stomach. What? I tried, Kai. He finally looked at me. More than once. Memories flashed through my head. Conversations I had dismissed. Warnings I had ignored. Moments when Noah had looked frustrated and I had assumed he was overreacting. I am sorry, I whispered. Noah stared at the ground. Do you know what hurt the most? I swallowed hard. No. It was not Ethan. His voice remained calm. It was watching you believe him. I had no defense against that, because he was right. Completely right. You trusted him more than you trusted me. The silence that followed felt endless. Finally, I forced myself to speak. I was wrong. Noah nodded once. I know. There is no excuse. No. But if I could go back, you cannot. His words were not cruel, just honest. That somehow made them worse. I rubbed my hands together nervously. I came here hoping I could fix everything. Noah looked at me for a long moment. Then he shook his head. You still do not understand. Then help me understand. For the first time, real emotion broke through his calm expression. Sadness. Old and familiar. The problem was never what Ethan did. My heart sank. Then what was it? Noah looked away toward the setting sun. You still do not know why I left. Noah's question followed me for the rest of the evening. You still do not know why I left. I found him again the next afternoon, sitting beneath a large oak tree near the edge of campus. Students crossed the lawn carrying books and coffee cups, but Noah seemed completely detached from the noise around him. For a moment, I almost turned around. Then he looked up and spotted me. You came back, he said. I was not finished listening. A faint smile appeared and disappeared just as quickly. I sat down beside him, leaving enough space between us to respect the distance he still seemed to need. For a while, neither of us spoke. Finally, Noah broke the silence. Do you remember the week before graduation? I nodded. Kind of. I remember all of it. His voice was quiet every second. Something in the way he said it made my chest tighten. Noah stared out across the grass. I kept trying to tell you the truth about Ethan. I know. No, you do not. He shook his head. The last week of school, I asked you to meet me behind the auditorium. The memory surfaced slowly. I remembered getting the message. I remembered never showing up. Ethan told me you changed your mind. Noah laughed softly. Of course he did. Shame crawled through me. What were you going to tell me? Noah was silent for several seconds. When he finally spoke, his voice sounded different, more vulnerable. I was going to tell you that you mattered to me. I looked at him. He still was not looking back. You already knew that. Not as a friend. The world seemed to pause. Noah let out a slow breath. I spent months trying to find the courage to say it. My heart was pounding now. Noah. He shook his head. Let me finish. I nodded. When you stopped trusting me, it hurt. When you believed Ethan over me, it hurt more. But what broke me was realizing that I had been building my future around someone who did not really see me. Every word landed with painful precision. I saw you, I said quietly. Not then. He finally turned toward me. There was no anger in his eyes anymore, just honesty. You saw the version of me that fit into your life. You never stopped to ask what I was feeling. I wanted to argue. I wanted to tell him he was wrong. But the truth sat too heavily between us. You are right, I admitted. Noah looked surprised. I spent years blaming Ethan, I continued, but the truth is that I made my own choices. For the first time since we started talking, some of the tension left his shoulders. That is all I ever wanted you to understand. The late afternoon sun painted the campus gold. Students laughed somewhere in the distance. Life continued around us. Noah studied me for a long moment before asking quietly, "If you could go back to when we were 17, what would you do differently?" I swallowed hard, because for the first time I already knew the answer. The answer sat between us for several seconds before I finally found the courage to say it out loud. I would have listened. Noah's eyes stayed on mine. That is it? I laughed softly. No, but it is where I should have started. A breeze moved through the trees overhead, scattering a few leaves across the grass. For the first time since finding him again, I did not feel like I was chasing a memory. I felt like I was talking to the real Noah. I spent a year thinking about what I would say if I saw you again, I admitted. Noah raised an eyebrow. Only a year? Okay, maybe longer. That earned the smallest smile. It disappeared quickly, but I caught it. I thought if I explained everything, it would fix things. Noah looked down at his hands. Life does not really work that way. I know. He nodded. Good. We sat quietly for a moment. Then Noah surprised me. Do you know what happened after I left? I shook my head. Not really. I was angry for a long time. His voice remained calm. Then I was sad. Then eventually I got tired of being either of those things. I listened carefully. So you moved on? Noah considered the question. I moved forward. Somehow those words felt different. Moving on sounded like forgetting. Moving forward sounded like surviving. And now? I asked. Noah looked out across campus. Now I do not know. The honesty in that answer meant more than any perfect speech could have. Because it was real, not a promise, not a rejection, just the truth. I smiled faintly. That makes two of us. Noah laughed. A real laugh this time. The sound felt familiar enough to make my chest ache. As the sun dipped lower, students began crossing the lawn on their way to dinner. The world around us glowed gold. Noah stood first. I should go. A few weeks earlier, those words would have felt like the end of everything. This time they did not. I stood too. Can I ask one more question? He tilted his head. Depends. Would you want to get coffee sometime? Noah immediately groaned. You are still trying to negotiate. It is one of my worst qualities. One of? I have a list. He shook his head, trying and failing to hide another smile. For a second, neither of us spoke. Then Noah did something unexpected. He held out his hand. Not dramatic, not romantic. Just simple. Honest. A beginning instead of an ending. I looked at it for half a second before taking it. His grip was warm and steady, familiar in a way that made my throat tighten. Coffee, he said. One coffee. I can work with that. Do not make me regret it. No promises. Noah rolled his eyes. Some things apparently never changed. We started walking across campus together, not too close, not too far apart. The distance between us was still there, but for the first time it no longer felt impossible. Years ago, I thought losing Noah was the worst thing that could happen. Then I thought finding him again would solve everything. I was wrong about both. The truth was much simpler. People are not prizes you win back. Trust is not something you recover with a single apology. And love, whatever form it takes, cannot survive without listening. As the evening lights flickered on across campus, Noah glanced over at me. You know, he said, you are still terrible at timing. I laughed. That is fair, but you are getting better. It was not forgiveness, not completely. It was something more honest. A second chance earned one conversation at a time, and as we disappeared into the crowd together, that was more than enough. Thank you so much for watching all the way to the end. If you enjoyed this story, please like, subscribe, and share it with friends who might enjoy it too. We would love to know where you are watching from. Tell us your city and country in the comments. More heartfelt and unforgettable LGBTQ stories are already waiting for you. See you in the next one.